guys, what's going on? This is the conservative speaking. Happy conservative perspective of Black History Month. Isn't this amazing? And um, we are going to start this conservative perspective of Black History Month speaking about the NAACP. The NAACP is an organization that supposedly is supposed to stand for justice for Black folks and are supposed to get um, and it's supposed to stand for civil rights for the blacks. The NAACP was really prominent during the time that lynchings were a common thing in the South, and they wanted to speak out against that and actually wanted to put an end to federal lynchings of of the blacks in the South. But as the years have gone by, the NAACP seems to want to stand for everything else that questions whether or not they truly stand for the best benefits of Black folks, because now they are identifying with things that the blacks would have never identified with back then. I mean, at least prior to the Civil Rights Act being signed into law in 1964. So let's move on with this as we go, and you will see why. You'll see what I am speaking of. So, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, aka therefore standing by the acronym of the NAACP, is a civil rights organization in the United States formed in 1909 as an interracial endeavor to advance justice for the blacks by a group including W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary White Ovington, Moorfield Story, and Ida B. Wells. I can tell you right now, Mary White Overton, Moorfield Story, and Ida B. Wells were all white. Mainly the people who actually started this organization was white. And leaders of the organization include Thurgood Marshall and Roy Wilkins. Its mission in the 21st century is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all people and to eliminate race-based discrimination. National NAACP initiatives include political lobbying, publicity efforts, and litigation strategies developed by its legal team. Blah, 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 blah. Let's get to the good stuff, shall we? So, the NAACP actually was started due to the Niagara movement. So before we had the NAACP, you had the Niagara movement. And the Niagara movement started due to a black woman named Mary Talbert, who was appalled by the exhibit in Buffalo, New York, of a disparaging caricature of slave life in the South, as well as a depiction of life in Africa called Old Plantation and Darkest Africa. So she informed W.E.B. Du Bois of the situation, and a coalition began to form. So in 1905, a group of 32 prominent black leaders met to discuss the challenges facing the blacks and possible strategies and solutions. They were particularly concerned by the southern states' disenfranchisement of blacks, starting with Mississippi's passage of a new constitution in 1890. Through 1908, Southern legislators dominated by white Southern Democrats ratified new constitution and laws, created barriers to voter registration and more complex election rules. And keep in mind, I mean, all of these laws that were passed down by the Democrats. I mean, you know, these Southern politicians who were white and who were Democrat were the ones that were passing these laws that worked against the blacks. NAACP, because of that, was founded on February 12, 1909 by a larger group including W.E.B. Du Bois, Archibald Grimke, Mary Church Terrell, and then the prominent white people, Henry Moskowitz, Mary White Ovington, William English Walling, who was a wealthy socialist son of a former slaveholding family. Isn't that amazing? I mean, the hypocrisy of the NAACP bringing in a white man to take over. I mean, bringing in a white man that was the son of a former slaveholder. How dare they? Amazing. The things that made the NAACP a prominent factor was the simple fact that they were the ones that actually set up the Montgomery bus boycott, in which one of their members was arrested. All right, that member, by the way, happened to be Rosa Parks. Was arrested because she refused to sit in the back of the back of the bus, which was reserved for the blacks. Back then, there were designated seats for specific races, because back then segregation was prominent and it was legal. All the whites sat in the front while all the blacks had to sit in the back. Rosa Parks, who claimed that her feet was so tired and she couldn't afford to sit in the back, pretended that she was so tired that she couldn't sit in the back that she wound up sitting in the front, in which prompted her to get arrested, which was staged by the NAACP, and I'll tell you why. So, the NAACP was successful in, well, actually, the NAACP's main mission was trying to desegregate the South. They wanted to get rid of segregation altogether. They were successful in the 1954 ruling of Brown versus Board of Education that made taxpayer-funded schools to incite or to implement segregation in their schools unconstitutional. So that ended segregation among the races in public schools. Then the NAACP felt that they can do it a step further by trying to desegregate races in buses. And the way that they did it was that they were going to set up and have one of the black females purposely sit in front of the bus just to cause a stir. Initially, Claudette Clover was the woman that was supposed to take that place for the NAACP, but she had a child out of wedlock. And back then in 1955, that was not only rarely was that heard of, but that was very taboo back then. The black community was not going to fall for a woman who's supposed to stand for civil rights and stand for the rights of the blacks to do so while having a child out of wedlock. Because back then the blacks believed in God, and they believed and they allowed God to lead them, and the blacks were not falling for, nor were they going to accept a woman having a child out of wedlock, because back then, 25% of black babies were born out of wedlock, so that was not a common thing in the black community. So the NAACP needed a backup plan, and their backup plan was Rosa Parks, who was a member of the NAACP charter in Montgomery, Alabama. So she was the perfect ripe for the picking. And Rosa Parks was the one that was picked by the NAACP to deliberately sit in the front of the bus. Yes, folks, this was planned. Rosa Parks, regardless of all the stuff that she said, as far as her being so tired that she had to that she had no choice but to sit in the front of the bus. It was all staged by the NAACP. She sat in front of the bus deliberately because the goal was to cause a ruckus. And for the most part, she did, because she wound up getting arrested. Initially, the bus operator gave her an opportunity to sit in the back. She said, "I'm so tired, I can't do it. I have to sit in the front." And because of that, Rosa Parks was arrested. Now, the boycott of the Montgomery buses lasted for about 381 days. So, you talk about a lot of business being lost, considering that 2/3 of the people who rode those buses were black. So they knew that economically, they could cripple the Montgomery bus company. So it was one of those things where they had the upper hand. They knew what they were doing, and they purposely did this because not only did they want to desegregate everything, but they wanted to be able to have a hand in these specific areas that they were trying to desegregate. But the whole simple fact that the whole thing was staged, even though they tried to plan it as if this was real, and Rosa Parks was just an old tired woman. She was just so tired. Truth of the matter was, the NAACP had this planned all along, and they had it planned just so that they could be able to fulfill and implement their agenda. And it's funny, considering all the things that Rosa Parks was rewarded for, which was pretty funny. Rosa Parks, for her sitting in the front seat, was a recipient of the International Freedom Conductor Award, presented by the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. She also filmed a cameo appearance in the television series Touched by an Angel. It was her last appearance on film. The simple fact that she received a reward for something that was staged, that on its own is a travesty. It's a travesty. But this is one of the things that was a part of the NAACP. All right. Um, and then obviously the NAACP ran into debt, and they had all types of issues, in which, because they ran out of debt, then Kwesi Mfume, a Democratic congressman from Maryland and former head of the Congressional Black Caucus, was named to the organization's president. 3 years later, strained finances forced the organization to drastically cut staff from 250 in 1992 to 50. I mean, they were going through it. Um, so in 1993, the NAACP's board of directors, whatever. So during the 2000 presidential election, Lee Alcorn, president of the Dallas NAACP branch, criticized Al Gore's selection of Senator Joe Lieberman for his vice presidential candidate because Lieberman was Jewish. On a gospel talk radio show on station KHVN, Alcorn stated, "If we get a Jew person, then what I'm wondering is, I mean, what is the movement for, you know? Does it have anything to do with the failed peace talks?" So I think we need to be very suspicious of any kind of partnership between the Jews at that kind of level, because we know that their interest primarily has to do with money and these kind of things. That's what made the NAACP president at the time, Kwesi Mfume, immediately suspend Alcorn and condemn his remarks. Mfume stated, quote, "I strongly condemn these remarks. I find them to be repulsive, anti-Semitic, anti-NAACP, and anti-American. Mr. Alcorn does not speak for the NAACP, its board, its staff, or its membership. We are proud of our long-standing relationship with the Jewish community, and I personally will not tolerate statements that run counter to the history and beliefs of the NAACP in that regard." Considering too that that any Jewish, I mean that obviously he had to do some damage control, because if you piss off the Jews, clearly you're not going to be able to get any funding, and the NAACP was already severely underfunded, so they need as much help as they can, especially from the Jews. But obviously, this clearly shows how much some black members feel about people that are not of their color, even if they're willing to assist them in their in their movement. Even if they're willing to assist them in their movement, they still like, some of the blacks still like to stick to their own kind. What a shame. What a sad way to live. And then the biggest thing about the NAACP is the fact that they stand up for homosexuals. As the American LGBT rights movement gained steam after the Stonewall Riots of 1969, the NAACP became increasingly affected by the movement to gain rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. While chairman of the NAACP, Julius Bond became an outspoken supporter of the rights of gays and lesbians and stated his support for same-sex marriage. He boycotted the 2006 funeral services for Coretta Scott King, as he said the King children had chosen an anti-gay megachurch. This was in contradiction to their mother's long-standing support for rights of gay and lesbian people. In a 2005 speech in Richmond, Virginia, Bond said, and I quote, "The blacks were the only Americans who were enslaved for 2 centuries. But we were far from the only Americans suffering discrimination then and now. Sexual disposition parallels race. I was born this way. I have no choice. I wouldn't change it if I could. Sexuality is unchangeable. Now you can clearly tell that this man was not a Christian at all. Satan was his daddy. That we know for sure. I mean, if he's trying to correlate blacks with homosexuals, I mean, how does the two even mix? Can't mix race with immorality. Now, again, I mean, homosexuality, it's a choice. It's an alternative lifestyle. And obviously, if you want to be a homosexual, you have every right to be that way. Again, you have the right to be wrong, but just because you want to be wrong doesn't mean that you need to implement that type of mentality upon everyone else. All right. While Julius Bond is okay with that, the simple fact that he was trying to implement that with the movement of racial justice for the blacks just shows you the type of direction that the NAACP was headed towards. Why would anyone take this organization seriously? It's amazing. Truly amazing that they actually took a stand on supporting homosexuality and same-sex marriage. And they try to put that along with fighting for the rights of the blacks. Amazing. That is amazing. So, without having to go any further into it, I'm just going to say this. The NAACP is pretty much the same. They fall in the same boat as Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, W.E.B. Du Bois, Michael Eric Dyson, Ben Crump, and all these other race baiters out here. They want to make all of the issues that the blacks are going through in America all about race and not necessarily about character. All right? It's funny how the NAACP is willing to talk about social injustice, but they don't seem to want to have a conversation with character injustice, which seems to be more prevalent in the black community than any type of racial injustice that you will want to point out. All right. Notice that the NAACP does not speak on the black-on-black killing that is running prevalent and is way more pertinent than any type of racial injustice that you can think of that occurred with the blacks in America. All right. The simple fact that they do not speak on 77% of black babies born out of wedlock. The fact that they don't speak on the failing of and the decline of the nuclear family in the black community. How is it that these people can talk about, racial injustice and talk about, all of the things that they think they want to stand for black people? Matter of fact, how can these people even speak on trying to speak upon what's best for the black community, or try to stand for what's best in the black community, and they're not addressing the elephant in the room, the main issues, the real issues that are pertaining to the blacks in the black community, such as black-on-black crime, such as the decline of the nuclear family. All right. such as 77% of black babies being born out of wedlock after the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, and only 25% of black babies were born out of wedlock prior to the Civil Rights Act being signed into law. The fact that they don't speak on Planned Parenthood, which is black genocide on its own in the black community, that takes the lives of more than 1,800 black babies every day. Not every year, every day. When single black women decide to butcher the unborn child in their womb through the hands of Planned Parenthood. Notice that the NAACP does not seem to want to speak on that, but they want to talk about social injustice. They'll have a 4-hour conversation of social injustice, but let them have even 1 minute of character injustice. And you'll be lucky if you can even get the NAACP to speak on that, because they're always quick to dismiss character justice. They don't want to have a conversation about that. But social injustice, propaganda, mob justice, oh, they're for that all day. But let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the comment section after you subscribe to my channel. Click the like button if you like the video. Share the video and subscribe to my channel, as I'll be bringing content for you on a double. And after you subscribe to my channel, click on the notification button so that you will be notified when new content drops from my channel. And with that being said, this is The Conservative signing out. Have a blessed day and happy Conservative Perspective Black History Month. Amazing!